I want to introduce myself a little bit and then introduce the class and talk about how it's going to work. Thank all of you for being here. I'm excited to have so many teachers. I think all of us are teachers in one way or another, but those of you who go in the classroom and prepare our children for the next generation are preserving our life and culture in a very important way. And that I appreciate that. I spent my whole working career as a teacher, and I'm delighted that through Common Ground, I'm able to continue to have contact with students and continue to share what I've learned. My name is Robert Pullen. I grew up in Southwest Georgia on a farm in the middle of Muskogee Creek country. I didn't know until middle age that my grandmother was about 1/4 Muskogee Indian. In that part of the world, to be Indian was a very dangerous thing, and it was not talked about. It was a good way to have your land or your life or what little bit of culture you'd been able to hang on to taken from you. And so, in fact, it was only after my grandmother died that in the conversation with my mother, she told me that my grandmother, her mother, was a Creek Indian. So I was terribly excited because I'd always been attracted, not only personally, but professionally, to the study of the Creek culture. My background, academic background, is in sociology and anthropology and counseling, all that people stuff. And I taught for 36 years at a public university, Troy University in Troy, Alabama. But when I found out I had Creek ancestry, that set me on fire to find a community that I could be a part of where I could learn in a firsthand way about the culture. And it took me a while to find somebody that would take up time with this mostly white fellow with a drop or two of Indian blood. But I did end up in contact with Sakim, who people who've been at Common Ground for some time know. He was a teacher there, and he became my teacher and mentor. The reason I'm doing this today is because about 4 or 5 years ago, as Sakim's health began to fail, he started to involve me in the class that he had taught there for many, many years, and then passed the torch to me. And so I honor him as my teacher and thank him for helping me to learn about the Muskogee culture that's become such an important part of my life in this last part of my life. So since middle age to now, over the last about 25 years, I have been deeply involved in the Muskogee culture as a student and as a participant. I have attended ceremonies in many Muskogee communities, including out in Oklahoma, where our ancestors were removed and where the Muskogee Creek Nation now resides. And I picked up teachers along the way there, and I live in Alabama, so they say when the student's ready, the teachers will come. And when I needed to know who I was, I found people in Oklahoma, people here in Alabama, people in Georgia and Florida, which was original Creek country, that were willing to teach me. And I count that as one of the greatest gifts that I've ever been given. And so I feel obligated and joyful to pass along what I have learned about the Muskogee culture, which it was so much a critical part of the Southeast United States, particularly the lower part of the Southeast, North Florida, Georgia, Alabama. It's done so much to shape our culture. So, for example, if you live in the South, you ever ate grits, you ate a Muskogee food. The Muskogee people practiced corn agriculture, and a food that they call sofke is soupy grits. And it was just a a staple part of their everyday diet. And when the Europeans came, they adopted that and many other things. One other example, if you live in the deep South, rural South, people swept their yards in the old days. They didn't have grass. They swept the sand and kept the yards clean. And that was a practice that they adopted also from the Muskogee people who kept their villages and communities pruned of ground vegetation and kept yards swept. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. In the last part of my life, particularly since I've been retired, I have continued to receive training in the Muskogee ways and culture, and I serve as a ceremonial leader and a teacher and a maker of medicine now in several Muskogee communities in this part of the world. But I've always been a teacher, and I'll always be a teacher as long as I have a mouth to talk with and students to listen. So thank you for being a part of that equation. Our subject is plants and art. And that's the heart of what we want to do today is, and that's one of the reasons we have people who are real artists, professional artists. I'm a piddler and a plunker. All of us are artists. Everybody has art in them and does art. And I want you to keep that in mind as we talk, as we get into the class and its structure about our hopes that you will produce some sort of art this week that connects with plants. I'm going to use what I have done and what I know about and have seen in the Muskogee world as an example of how plant arts are related to traditional Muskogee Creek life, particularly the ceremonial life of Muskogee people. So I'll be talking about our ceremonies, our medicines, the power objects that we use in ceremonies, and how most of those things are directly related to plants. I can't conceive of how Muskogee life could move forward in its contemporary or even in its traditional way without close connection to plants. And I hope that what I'm able to share with you about my experience of Muskogee culture will not only be interesting to you and help you understand this important part of Southeastern culture in general, but that it can be a model for you as you think about some kind of art work or art project that you can do. And our other presenters will talk also about that and give you ideas and some show and tell about things that they've done and something that to inspire you in your own work. We'll definitely get Linda to talk about her work with creating jewelry and how important plants are in her inspiration. And Pat, of course, is using plant pigments in her art. Last year in our Plant Speak class, she did this wonderful demonstration of how to make a beautiful yellow pigment that I think she started with a Vermeer painting with one of the women who had this beautiful yellow, and she showed us how that yellow was created. It was just magic. And so art can mean a lot of things. In our class last year, one of the women who was a part of the class wrote a poem about a tree in her yard that she had a close relationship with. So, don't think only visual arts, though of course that is a very broad way of bringing art into being. But just be creative. We hope you'll be creative. And I'll be talking more at the end of our session today about that part. That's your homework. Your homework is to connect with a plant or a group of plants or some plants, family of plants in some deeper significant way, and then bring some sort of object or experience out of that you can share with us. And we'll be talking about that through the week and giving you guidance and assistance, so you don't just have to pull that out of the air all by yourself. The course, the structure of the course is every day I'll talk with you a little bit about Muskogee culture and how plants connect with our ceremonial life. We will have a presenter each day of the week who will give you something from their own experience. Pat is going to talk about the Lewis and Clark expedition and the plants that they contacted along the way. Our other presenter, Barb Steele, is going to talk about Native American plants in the Northeast and Tidewater area. We may have another presenter. We've lost track of him. He is a Native American weaver from out the Southwest who has been up on a mountain with the sheep, and we haven't been able to get in contact with him. So if he gets down off the mountain with his sheep, then he will talk to us about plants used in weaving. If not, then I'll fill that gap by talking with you about a particular plant and how it's used in, well, the plant is, if we get to this, I'm going to talk with you about button snake root, Eryngium yuccifolium, scientific name if you want to look it up. Button snake root will take it to you also. Button snake root is used in Muskogee ceremony as a ceremonial medicine, and it's also used as a healing medicine. And so I thought they would, and I can show you that plan and show you how it's prepared and how we use it. And it'll give me a chance to talk in a little more detail about the idea of medicine in Muskogee culture. So I'll be kind of tying things together around this information out of the Muskogee culture. And that's M-U-S-K-O-G-E-E, Muskogee, though our people are more commonly known as Creek Indians. Our name for ourselves was Muskogee, the name for Europeans who found us living along the rivers and creeks, named us Creek Indians, and we still use that proudly, even though it was not our name for ourselves. And so I'll tie things together around Creek culture and give you a picture of how Muskogee Creek people keep their connection with plants alive. We'll have the other presenters who come in. We'll talk among ourselves about the plants that we are connecting with and relating with, and what kind of art we think we might make out of those plants. And then on Friday, on the last day, we'll have a panel discussion of all of the presenters, and then have you as students join into that discussion with your own ideas and questions. And then we'll wrap that day up with some show and tell of what kind of projects you have completed. Now, I'm going to stop there and ask if anybody has a question just about structure and mechanics.
I just want to add, Robert, that on
Yes.
Thursday evening from 6:30 to 7:45, all of the visual artists from this virtual week will be doing artist talks that will be streamed onto the YouTube Common Ground site. But if you want to participate and ask questions at all, you want to do it live. And that's the time frame for that. So Sasha and Sue and Kira and the other visual artists will present first, and then all of the artists involved in Plant Speak will wrap up the second half of that discussion.
Thank you, Lyndon. And you help us remember to talk about that again later in the week to remind folks about it. Okay. Well, let's just jump in then. We call this class Plants Speak to draw attention to the fact that plants are active in our lives and in our relationships. Plants do many things. They feed us, they house us, they clothe us, they give us beauty and inspiration. They give us many of our medicines, and they speak to us. Plants speak to us. Anybody who keeps houseplants know that plants as living beings are in dialogue with you. You know, if your thumb is not so green and maybe a little brown, sometimes the plants have to holler at you. They have to yell. They have to turn their leaves yellow and droop over and hang and say, oh, I need some water, or I don't need so much water, back up. So, you know, plants speak to us. In Muskogee culture, this is a part of our training, particularly if you're training to work in medicine and ceremony, is learning how to hear plants speak more clearly than sometimes we do. So I want to begin with that idea of relationship with plants. I read somewhere years ago that most people in our culture can name only 10 or fewer plants. Now that's a poverty of plant relationship. Most of you, I'm sure, could do better. An indigenous person who is living in a traditional culture in connection with the land typically will know the names of 500 plants at least. And if they have a cultural or a ceremonial or a medicinal responsibility to their community, then they would it would be a great many more than that. And so plant relationships can be a lot deeper than they are. One of the really important things for this week is for you to connect deeply with a plant. It might be a plant you already have an established relationship with or a connection with. My mother loved coleus. She had a big picnic table outside her kitchen table where she looked out the back window where she washed the dishes. And on that table, she had probably 50 or 60 different coleus plants that she had collected over the last half of her life. And you know, every winter she would take cuttings from those plants and put them in the greenhouse so that she could carry them through to the next year, and then the coleus table would spring to life again. She died several years ago, but I continue. I can't say I've saved all her 50 varieties of coleus. It's a kind of I was not as committed to coleus as she was, but I always have some coleus growing in my garden to remember Mama and to keep that relationship alive. In our own culture, we may not see that relationship so directly. If we get most of our food from a grocery store, we're seeing plants removed from their natural environment. But if you garden, if you have a yard or even a window box in your garden, you're holding that connection with plants that you are able to maintain. You know, in the rural South, everybody gardened. They ate out of the gardens. I still eat out of my garden. It's one of my main occupations. I say to people that sometimes as we get older, we get less energy and the garden gets smaller. And I'll ask a friend who I know is a gardener, well, what do you have in your garden? Well, I didn't plant a garden this year. But my next question is, well, I know you're growing something. What are you growing? Well, I've got 2 tomato plants and some, you know, some squash bush or whatever. So that keeps your gardening license. That relationship continues. A part of my training as a medicine person in the Muskogee culture was to learn how to hear plants speak more plainly, not just drooping when they're underwatered or overwatered or dropping leaves when they're in crisis, or, you know, tomatoes putting the little black spots on the bottom of the fruit, blossom end rot. If any of you are gardeners and grow tomatoes, you know that's a common problem. And when they're speaking to you with the black spot, they're saying, I need some magnesium. And Epsom salts, it has a high degree of magnesium. So when your plants start showing you black spots on the bottom, they're saying, give me some magnesium. And you take 3 tablespoons of Epsom salts in a gallon of water, mix them up and pour it on the foliage of the plant and around the plant, about a gallon per plant. And that will make them happy. And you'll get some nice tomatoes again. The way to hear plants, of course, plants don't have voices like we have. They speak to us with their leaves and with their flowers and their stems. But they are beings. They have life and they have purpose and intent. And plants and everything else have spirit. Everything that is a being has spirit. Now, being is a large category. That doesn't just mean living beings. Rocks are beings too, and rocks have spirits, and rocks can speak to you, but that's an entirely different discussion. I better not go down that rabbit hole. But plants can definitely speak to you. They speak through our intuitive and creative facility. You can hear plants speak, but you have to slow down to their scale. And as in any other relationship, you have to put in time with that plant and build the relationship in order to hear what they have to say. When I first started seeking communication from plants, one of my teachers told me how to go about that. In fact, it was Sakim, who some of you know. And he said, now this takes time. You just don't blunder into the woods, kick a tree and say, hey, tell me something. There's no relationship there. There's no respect there. You put in the time, you go and you sit down in the woods by the tree and you listen. And, you know, probably what you'll hear first are the bugs and the birds. And maybe as your ear gets tuned better, you might begin to hear the wind moving through the leaves and the leaves rustling and rattling. But over time, and that's not just one time or 1 hour or one day, as you begin to have a sense of the flow of the life of the plants that are a part of this place that you're working toward building a relationship, you can begin to hear what the plants are saying first to each other and to the other members of that community. And if you listen to what the plants are saying to each other, eventually they'll include you in the conversation. Now that recipe for plant building plant relationship can go deeper, but that's where it starts. It starts with being willing to put in the time. You would not expect to sit with a group of people who speak a language that you don't know and be fluent in 30 minutes. Our culture kind of programs us into 30-minute or 1 hour blocks where everything's supposed to be resolved in that length of time. But it takes time to connect to a culture. I could not even estimate the hours that I've spent in the woods, just being with the plants and finding plants and learning about plants and listening to plants. Someone mentioned earlier about not knowing all the names of plants. Well, that's I don't know the names of all the people in this community that I live in, but the ones that I interact with, I know their names and I know something of their histories, and that comes with time. And as we become intentional about learning the plants in our area, learning their names, learning how they live, learning what they have to offer to us, then those relationships get deeper and our experience of the plants get deeper. One of the ways that I've been taught to extend the depth of my relationship with plants is to, well, I guess for want of a better word, court the plants, romance the plants. Think about what you can do to make those plants happy. You know, what do plants want? They want a place to be, just like we do. They want the things necessary for life. They want, I'm assuming, experience. They want to reproduce themselves so that life goes on. And we can contribute to those things. As I'll give you an example of, I mentioned a plant earlier, button snake root, Eryngium yucifolium. It's a very important Muskogee plant. I wanted to, improve my relationship with that plant. So I had a place, a circle, a retreat place down in Conecuh National Forest, which is a mature tall pines preserve, and which is open for camping and hiking. And so I went down and made me a little circle, a place where I went and camped and sat and listened and learned. And one of the plants that was in that general area was button snake root. The Muskogee name for the plant is Basha. And so I was so happy. I was hiking one day and I walked by and I saw a Basha plant beside the hiking trail. And I stopped and, I knelt down and I touched it and I talked to it and I listened to it and celebrated its place there. And I thought, well, if there's one here, there's more than one here. And so I asked it, I said, where are your brothers and sisters? Where are your parents and grandparents? It was a young one. And so I began to kind of, I left the trail and started walking up. In a tall pine forest is open. You can move around most anywhere. And so I started walking and listening and following and no sound, but intuition. And I got up the hill about 300 yards, and there was just this whole grove of Basha plants. I mean, far over 100, big ones, small ones. And I just sat down in the middle of them and just celebrated this place with so many beautiful plants. And every time I was down there, I would always go back to that place and be with them. Give them a gift of tobacco. Tobacco is a precious thing to Native people. And so to scatter some tobacco around is a way of saying you're very important to me. At some point, I had the heartbreaking experience of going back there, and the Forest Service had come in and cut mature pines, and the whole patch was just ransacked. Most of the plants killed, limbs laying all around. I thought, oh no. And I thought for a while and thought, well, what can I do? I said, I'm sorry. But I took 5 or 6 young plants and I moved them to my circle and made a little boscha garden there. That was something that I could do. When you're in the woods and you find a plant you want to get in a deeper relationship with, gather seed and scatter them in places where it would be that they would like to grow. If a plant is in distress, for example, it's in the same area once, there'd been a big storm and a tree had blown over and pinned down a pine sapling, a longleaf pine sapling. It was about that big around. Big tree had fallen over and just bent it down on the ground, but it hadn't broken it. So I cut it free, stood it back up, tied it up on 4 sides so it'd be straight. And that tree now is it's a huge tree this big. So that tree is a special friend of mine because I was able to do something to help the tree. So if we think about building relationships, it's just like building relationships with people, doing something that will make others happy, and will make our green relatives and friends happy. I would encourage you to do this in whatever plants you choose to build a relationship with this week or strengthen relationship with. One of the things that you can do that's very powerful is to get down on the plant's level. Take you a blanket or a pillow, get down on the plant's level so that you're face to face with this plant. If it's a small plant, if it's a tree, you can just lean up against it. And exchange breath with the plant. Consciously exchange breath. One of the most important things plants do for us is give us the oxygen that we have to live. In fact, everything we need to live, our food, the air we breathe, the medicines that we take, almost all of it come directly or indirectly from plants. So get on the plant's level and breathe out the carbon dioxide from your body. And the plant, of course, will take that in because that's what it needs to do its work and to live its life. And so be there, be with the plant, and consciously exchange breath and have that experience of being part of the cycle of life and interaction that bind plants and people together. You can also spend time looking at the individual structures of the plant, touching and seeing the structures. Now, you're probably not going to be building a relationship with a poison ivy plant, but if you did decide to do that, of course, you wouldn't want to touch it. Taste the plant. And of course, you already need to know enough about the plant to know that it's not dangerous or poisonous. But even with poison ivy, for example, one of the Muskogee practices in building a relationship with poison ivy, important if you're living in the woods, is in the spring of the year, when the plant first comes up, you can pick a tender green leaf, ball it up, and swallow it. And over time, build up resistance to the oils that cause the eruptions of skin. Now, warning, don't do that. You're not as tough as a Native American is, and not as connected to the environment. If you were highly allergic to poison ivy, that might irritate your throat, and worst case scenario, it could even cause the throat to swell and make it difficult to breathe. But I just offer that as an example. Most plants, there are very few plants that a little taste, even if they're not entirely healthy to eat, a big double handful, a little taste wouldn't hurt you. And that gives you a different way of experiencing the plant. Of course, smelling the plant, using all your senses to connect with the plant is a way that Muskogee people use to make their relationships with plants deeper. That grows out of the Muskogee awareness of how important plants are to our lives. Most of the food we eat comes either directly from plants or indirectly through harvesting animals or flesh that is fed by plants. And of course, the plants give us, my cotton shirt came from a plant. The wood in my house comes from a plant. Many of the medicines that I take, and some I know come from plants because I make them myself. I had a visit with my doctor today for a infected tick bite that I can't seem to get rid of, and he asked me what are you doing for this? Because he knows that I use plant medicines. So I told him Basha that I mentioned before, the snake root, is an antibiotic and a cleanser and healer of wounds. And so that's been helpful for the external manifestations of this tick problem. But I have to confess that I am taking antibiotics for what's going on the inside. And I hate ticks and I don't like being sick, but part of the deal of spending a big part of your time out in the woods is you have to deal with all of your relatives who live in the woods, including the creepy crawly ones. I'll talk more about medicine later, but I want to introduce this idea up front. So when I say medicine, you don't just think about pills and doctors, potions and chemicals. The Muskogee idea of medicine is everything that contributes to health and wholeness and harmony. So a dance is medicine as much as a poultice is medicine. I remember years ago reading about, this wasn't a Muskogee cultural practice, it was I won't say the Trobriand Islanders that Margaret Mead wrote about, one of the three groups that she studied. She discovered that the men spent a great deal of time in adorning themselves, prettifying themselves. And she observed that you seldom saw a man of that culture with unless he had a flower in his hair, woven into his hair or sticking in his ear. And when she asked about that, they said, "Oh yes, that's very important medicine." They believe, as many indigenous people believe, that the soul rests lightly in the body, and might easily drift away. In our culture, we probably would do better to have such an important notion of care of souls. But they said the flower, making yourself beautiful makes your soul happy, so that your soul will stay with you, and you and your soul can be in the kind of relationship that we're talking about having with plants. So a flower is medicine. Art is medicine. Art is good for our souls, good for our spirits. It calms and soothes us, or sometimes maybe we need stirring up and exciting, and it can do that. It can do that as well. So medicine is everything that makes us healthy, whole, and in balance. Now, I want to shift gears a little, but again, I'm going to stop now and ask if anyone has a question or comment that you'd like to share. I see that Barbara has joined us. I'm glad you're here, Barbara. Why don't you unmute, Barbara, and just introduce yourself just a little bit, since you're going to be one of our teachers.
Okay. Hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I had some interruptions before I could get on. It's all good. I'm going to be the presenter tomorrow, and Ken Coons, who's a great photographer, did a really nice video. I'm a year older than last year. I talked about the colonists and the use of herbal plants for medicine and all. I had a nursery for 38 years, and it's fascinating that you are talking about a plant that I bought this spring down off of Chincoteague Island, called Rattlesnake Master. I had never, in all the years I've grown plants, it's a new one. I've never met a plant that I didn't like. That's my thing, and it comes through, I guess, my family. I found out there's some Cherokee in there somewhere. But anyway, I must admit, it didn't do well. And we've been fighting over huge, hot temperatures here. And today it's very nice. There's a breeze, but it's almost too much. It's a dry, almost a desert breeze going through. I'm just above the Mason-Dixon line in Pennsylvania, but I grew up down in Maryland. Any other comments? Tomorrow I'm going to be talking a lot about trees. I think trees are very, very important, and the use of them, and the eastern woodland natives. Definitely, we're living in a forest. I'm going to talk about some of the trees and plants that they used before they left the area, probably in the 1700s. Unfortunately, they had to move out of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Barbara. Appreciate that. Well, I'm glad you made a connection with Basha. One of its names is Rattlesnake
I'm going to try
Master.
again. Yeah.
Good, because it's used as a snake bite cure. The poultice is put on a snake bite, and you drink some of the juice if you have been bitten by a snake.
Now, I figured with that name it had to have something, but
yes,
yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Anybody else? Any question or comment or anything you'd like to share? Well, we have about 30 minutes left. Is that right?
Yes, till 5:30.
Okay. Lynn, would you, if we get to 15 minutes and I'm still rattling on, I tend to get out of control and chasing rabbits. Please come on and remind me that we're about to wind down, because I want to have some time at the end for us to talk about plants that we're going to try to build a relationship with and make art with this week. But I wanted to give you a preview today of the of what I'll be talking about. I'm going to build my presentations around the ceremonial life of Muskogee people and the plants that are involved in that. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about coiled baskets as containers of power. Tomorrow, Tuesday, I'm going to talk about weaving cattail mats, using cattail fronds to weave mats that make a platform, a bed, a place for power objects that are used in ceremonies. Some things are so powerful you just don't lay them down. You put them down on something that gives them a place to be. On Wednesday, I'm going to talk about gourd containers, how gourds and gourd containers are used in Muskogee culture. And I'll tell a story about how we were given the three sisters. Do you know who the three sisters are in the plant world? Corn, beans, squash, or pumpkins. And also I'm going to introduce you to a rain-making medicine, the rain turtle, and show you a gourd that's been prepared to assist in that medicine. On Thursday, I'm going to talk about lightning struck wood and little stars. Little stars are those little plants that grow down close to the ground that have little tiny flowers of all different colors, and I'll talk about that. And of course, we'll have presentations from other people as well. But today I thought I would show you some coiled baskets, and coiled baskets are just almost universal in Muskogee or in the indigenous world. This is a basket made of sweetgrass. I have 4 baskets to show you, and all of them but one are sweetgrass. One is made of longleaf pine needles. Now, this is not native to the Southeast, but you can grow it down here. I had a hard time getting it started, but once I got it started, it turned out to be almost invasive. But sweetgrass is Hierocoli odorata. Hierocoli odorata. It has a vanilla smell, and in these baskets, even after years, will still preserve that vanilla smell. It's long leaves that when you harvest the grass stems and dry them, they curl up tightly and make a really nice basket material. In fact, you can see the light is reflecting off of them. The silica content is so high that they actually have a shine to them. This is a tobacco basket. I mentioned earlier the importance of tobacco, and inside the basket is native tobacco, Nicotiana rustica, which came into this part of the world about 10,000 years ago and is very important in Native American culture. So this basket holds my tobacco. Now, this is a pine straw basket. It's a tube. It's got a nice little sheen on it too. And it holds my medicine stick. Now, everybody who works with medicine, Muskogee medicine, has a medicine stick. Right, you see that's about 2.5 feet long, might be even 3 feet long. It's not a walking stick. It's not a staff. It has no real purpose other than if you work with medicine, you need a medicine stick. So there it is. And it is displayed on a cattail mat with other power objects during ceremonies where medicines will be made or taken. Usually they are carved in some more ornate way. One that I saw showed a snake coiling down the staff, chasing a lizard. And so there may be, I saw one historically that was a medicine staff carved in the shape of a mushroom, the medicinal mushrooms, magical mushrooms, hallucinogenic mushrooms that apparently our ancestors during the Mississippian period at least used. There was a medicine staff carved in the shape of one, and it had been coated with copper that had mostly eroded away. But so there's this is made of longleaf pine, which is preferable for pine basketry because it's the pine needles are longer, so you don't have to feed your bundle as often when you're making them. This is a small sweetgrass basket that contains two hunting and war stones. Their name in Muskogee is sapia. You see they're wrapped up inside deer skin and then kept in a basket here. These were stones that traditionally were used in as hunting magic and in warfare to give you advantage over your enemies. Now, neither of these are activated because I'm not a hunter and I'm not at war with anybody either, but I keep them wrapped up in the deer skin and in a basket to protect them. This is just a small flat basket with sweetgrass, and you see that the start for the basket is a slice of a black walnut, little black walnut slice to get it started. You can start the basket with something like that in the center, or you can start it just on itself, with I started this one with a little flat beginning and then added to it. Now these baskets are, this little flat basket ordinarily holds these seeing stones. These are stones that are used for divination, for especially in sickness, for getting information. You hold them up to the light and you look through them and see what you might be told about what's wrong with the person or how they might get better. Now, I took a big long run of basket coiling for a while. I don't do it much anymore, but I needed baskets and I wanted to make them myself and invest my own energy and my own creativity and my own time in them, because there are certain objects like these sabia stones that are so powerful that you need to give them a special place to live. You need to contain them. Now, if these stones, if I open this up, you would see it's a little multi-terminated black and white crystal, quartz crystal, that came from a Muskogee village site up in central Alabama. One of my teachers told me that it was a place where sabia stones lived, and that I could go there and one might show itself to me, and it did. He also warned me before I left, don't you wake that thing up and put it to work. That's too much. That's too much power. You don't need it, so you don't need to do it. the way you would wake it up basically is a drop of your own blood. But then you would be feeding and caring for that stone. You would have to give that stone blood, the blood of an animal that you killed, or even more serious, the blood of an enemy that you had killed. Well, I don't need anything like that woke up and rattling around. If I had awakened these stones and put them to work, they would not be in my house. Even wrapped and basketed, they would be out in the woods, in a safe place, safe away from my family and children and people who might be coming and going. But that's the idea of the basket. The basket is a home for and a containment for a power object, for the power of objects. My medicine stick, the work I do with medicine, ceremony and healing medicines, I keep that in a safe place. The tobacco, the power of the tobacco, it needs to be honored and kept contained. Now, part of the reason for cold baskets being so important is in Muskogee life, the idea of power is that power is always moving. Power is, power objects are things that have their own lives. So you have to maintain them and interact with them and keep your relationship with them good, or they can harm you. And power always moves in a spiral. Power never sits still, and it always moves in a spiral. And so these baskets reflect that nature of, that spiraling, moving nature of power, and that makes a basket a good home for power. When we deal
Robert,
with
it's
power,
5:15.
thank you, Lynn. When we deal with power, we have to honor it, respect it, contain it, and use it properly. A large part of my training as a ceremonial leader and a maker of medicine is the lessons about the care and keeping of those things so that I don't do harm or that they don't do harm to me. All right, let's spend our last few minutes now thinking about what you might do. I hope you've already been thinking as I've been rattling around here. I hope that you've been thinking about what plant you may want to deepen your relationship with. And Lynn, if you could put us back on everybody.
All right, everybody can, if you don't mind, turning on your mics. And for the recording, Robert, I think I'll just highlight the speaker rather than put a gallery view, because for the recording, the gallery view can be hard for people.
I understand. That's fine.
But everybody
That's why
can
you're in charge of that. Thank you, Lynn.
unmute and please feel free to respond or ask questions.
Okay, we'll start with with question. Did anybody have any question or any response, or maybe some of your own experience you'd like to share?
I just realized, Robert, that when I bought this property in 1983, one of the things that drew me here was this ginormous buttonwood tree in the backyard near a spring house. My house was built in 1768, and this tree's been here a long time. And they're called sycamores, but they're also called buttonwoods. And it's a ginormous big shade tree covering my spring house, and of course, keeping the little pond and the water in the spring house cool. They don't have a lot of offspring. And I found a seedling, and this was years ago. Barb remembers Jimmy Fox, one of our students, helped me dig it up with a big enough root ball that I could plant it in a row in my garden so that it wouldn't get mowed down. And I nurtured that tree for about 5 years. I'll take pictures of both of them.
Right.
Because the daughter and I'm pretty sure it's feminine. She has long flowing skirts, and anybody that gardens or mows here for me, they know those limbs do not get cut off, whatever they have to do to preserve that beautiful shade, kind of like a twirling skirt. And it has to happen. And I had never thought of the connection of this property and me and those
Mhm.
two trees until you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's a great example, Linda. Thank you. Somebody else want to share a plant connection experience?
I'll go. My husband and I just planted our first tree that, we got from like a sapling or whatever. It's an Eastern redbud tree.
Mhm.
So we've been really like focusing on taking care of it and nurturing it, and it's our tree together, I guess, is sort of how I view it. But I've had I know what you're saying about plants, because having meaning, because I've had a plant for 21 years, I think.
Mhm.
And I would be so sad, really, really sad if anything happened to that plant. It's,
Yeah.
it's gone through ups and downs, but ultimately it's still kicking, and it's a peace lily plant. So, but yeah, I know what you're saying about
That's great.
having
Have
meaning.
have you ever tried eating the flowers of the redbud?
No,
Yeah.
I've only seen pictures of them. I don't, yeah, I will see.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. When it gets big, you can add them to your salad.
Ah, okay, good to know. Thank you.
All right. Someone else like to share something?
Hey, I can share that I'm trying to learn in my practices, and plants being one of them, how to not be afraid of intent. Like I have plant pots scattered around my deck, but they're almost all wild catch pots, because if I plant something, then I'm responsible for it. And so I have a oak tree right out here I'm looking at, and I have a pot on the deck next to it, and I'm pretty sure it's a baby oak that's growing in this pot here, that I guess at some point I'm going to probably have to decide whether to move it somewhere, or it'll get too big for the pot. So that's one thing I've been thinking about. Yeah.
Mhm. That's good. That's a good example. Someone else?
Can I interject about the great expanding seedlings? I have a redbud tree. I talked about it last year, and it is very prolific. It grows very close to brick patio type thing, and the seeds just, every time I go out, I find a little baby seedling, and I can't help myself. I have to gently pull it up, make sure I get the roots. I have one right now in the sink because I had to stop to do this, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to pot it. And after I grow it for a couple of years, I give it I label everything. I make a list about how to take care of it, and I give it to our local garden club for a money raiser. Or if anybody comes by my house, I have some extra sycamores from the Watershed Alliance that I belong to. And the other is lots of little red buds. So please come by. That's it.
You're the redbud lady. That's great. That's a great example of,
Can't help it. I have to do it.
having a good relationship with the plant. Someone else?
I can talk about madder plants. I grow a lot of dye plants, and right now making some paint from madder, and I've been buying the root, but I think I'm going to go dig the roots out of the garden like tomorrow and try starting from the fresh root and seeing what colors. You're supposed to get several kinds of red and orange from it. So my plants really love it out here, and they're only a year old, but they had some sizable roots earlier this year. So I'm going to try that out. And, there's a number of YouTube videos you can watch, the processing. So like today I needed sulfuric acid, and so I traveled around, and Tarnix is the best, closest thing to sulfuric acid. So I'm cooking some madder with Tarnix right now.
No,
So-
you'll have to tell us what you get.
Yeah.
Show us what you get. Great. Somebody else?
I have a plant story. I cannot think of what the name of the plant is right now. But it was one of those random buys. I was with a friend and I saw the plant at the store and I just felt like I was like, no, like I need that plant. I really liked it and things. So I ended up buying it and taking it home. And I struggled with this plant for months, where to put it, what sunlight it needed, and things like that. And it took some time until we found the perfect spot. And now that it's in the perfect spot, I almost feel like I truly embrace like the plant mom part of it, because now I see like little buds popping up and I'm like, yay, like that's a sign I'm doing what I should be doing and things like that. So that's kind of, that's the plant that I thought of immediately, because it is taking some time and it is thriving now and doing much better now that we've found out exactly what it needs. So
Well, you could take a picture of it, or you could just hold it up for us tomorrow, and maybe somebody in this group will know what it is and can tell
Yeah.
you its name, and you can take that relationship a little deeper. Thank you.
yes.
Somebody else? We have time for one or two more.
Sure. So I grew up in a very dry area, so I've never been into planting. But my mom had a money plant. I don't know what its like official name is, but we say like money plant. And I tried to have mine, but I guess I did not really know how to take care of it. And I've been wanting to get one for a very long time, but a few months ago when I was finally deciding to buy it, my roommate was like, no, you should not buy it yourself. The tradition is that someone else has to give it to you, which I didn't know.
Mhm.
So I'm waiting for someone to get it for me. I guess I'll just ask my host mom to get one for me, and then I'm excited to learn more about it and to see if I can take care of it this time or not.
Well, good. That's good. Well, you may want to do some research about the plant as a part of this class and get ready for the universe to send it to you. You start calling it and welcoming it and inviting it.
Absolutely.
We'll have some more time for this kind of sharing tomorrow, but there's one other thing I need to talk about. And we have 5 minutes, so let me interrupt this part and we'll wrap up here. I want you each to choose a plant. Those of you who have talked about plants today, maybe that plant, but choose a plant and start doing some research. And tomorrow, I'd like for everyone to be prepared to show us a plant that you think you want to build a better relationship with. Maybe a photograph that you've taken or online, or if you don't have a red bud in a pot that you want to show us. But have a plant and maybe a picture of the plant and see if you can find and do a little research and see if you can find any artwork that contains that plant or how that plant might be used in making art. Or maybe just think about that yourself and you may begin to have an idea about how you could make art out of your wild oak or your money plant that's coming or your redbud that has sprouted. And every day we'll talk a little bit about that and move a little more toward the actual making of some sort of art project. And this can be, first grade level art project. We have no censors and no judgment here. Just start and make something beautiful. And I promise you that I and your teachers will be just like your mama when you brought that ashtray home from the first grade and she couldn't even tell what it was, but she loved it anyway. So just be bold and turn your creative child loose and start thinking about the plant that you'd like to spend some time getting to know this week and how you might connect that plant with art that's already been done or art that you might do. Well, that's all I have. Any last words from any of our other teachers or facilitators or any of our students? feel free to contact me if you have questions. And in fact, I'll hang around for a minute or two when we close if any of you want to talk to me. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you all.